So this will be form composition 2. We're going to get a little bit more detail into form composition. We've already talked a little bit about circular and rectangular themes, but this is kind of a rehashing of the various themes that you might have. So we're going to go in a little bit more detail with some of these. As a reminder, this just provides your options for visual structure. You don't want to do any more than 2 themes. And even if you do more than one, so if you do the 2, make sure one of them stands out. All right, so we've done the circular thing. Keep in mind that they can be overlapping, they can be concentric, you can do parts of circles, basically arcs, and that still falls into that theme. So if we look at something like this, yeah, some of these circles are not taking advantage of the strong points of circles, but what you'll notice is this could be, the center portion could be lawn. This could be, instead of lawn, it could be a fire pit with seating around it. This could be planting areas. Could be containers. So you just have to imagine this as different sorts of areas and different parts of the lawn. And you can see how they're all organized together. This could be an entranceway. Remember, if you have a doorway, we want to look right here in the circle. So if you're standing out, you're going to be looking in toward the circle. If you're standing in the center of the circle, if this area here is a little patio, you've got all kinds of different views that are going to come out from this. Right? So you should use a variety of circles. You might have the lawn as the most important area. That's usually the biggest thing for us is the lawn. But it could be gardens if somebody doesn't want as much lawn. All right. Keep in mind the important parts of a circle, whether that's the center, the circumference, the radius, diameter, however you want to look at it, and watch out for your acute angles. So if we look at something like this, all the circles are the same. It's boring. You have no way of knowing what's doing what. They're overlapping, but it's not at all interesting. Whereas this, even though some of these circles are not taking advantage of the strong parts of a circle, here's one here that's not at all taking advantage of the strong parts of a circle, that is far more interesting than the previous one. All right, so create different orientations, create different focal points, create different views. You can do this on level ground or on terraces. So here's an example of a design that might be somebody's backyard. You can see that the lawn is the main focus of this. But if you're standing here on the patio, you've got a view to perhaps a focal point tree. Maybe back here we're screening something. So there's lots of things that you can do. Even over here where there's a little bit of a patio right in this area here, there's not as much to view, but we do have views to here. If we're looking out, again, we've got views to here. We've got views to all these areas. You can look at all kinds of different areas. We've got a tree right here placed in the center of a focal point. So you want to be able to look at all kinds of different areas and different views for people. This is that same landscape design in a 3D rendering. So you can see the different views and the different shapes. I'll show you some pictures also of concentric circles. So take advantage of varying radiuses. Not really sure what's supposed to be there. You do, again, don't want to place things randomly. So you want to be looking at people's yards and figuring out where their views are. All right, and this might be a very simple drawing, patios, or kind of replicating here on the right-hand side some of the drawing that I had before. But this might be what it would look like in an actual design. So over here on the left, this might be a patio with a fire pit in the center. It could be a container in the center. We've got screening in the back for something. So we're, again, driving our view right there toward the center. Over on the right-hand side, you can see all kinds of different views. So if we look at those different views, we're looking both in and out. I have the arrows drawn out, but it could just as easily be this coming in toward the house and driving the view toward the door. Curvilinear sometimes is called natural. It's really not. It's a little more structured, and we don't want to say that it's not natural, that other landscapes are unnatural. It's not implying any no order. It's still very ordered. And here you're going to definitely be using more portions of circles and ellipses rather than the pure circle. So here we're going to have curves, right? And we're going to have lots and lots of different curves. These are fantastic for pastoral senses, for generating sweeping areas. They're great for either flat or rolling terrain. Again, I'm not suggesting that you line up your circles and your ellipses just like these are, because obviously you end up with lots of these sorts of things. But it gives you an idea that we're using more than just circles for a curvilinear form. You're using parts of ellipses as well. And this might be what it would look like in a design. Again, we want to have a tendency to draw like this, but don't. Have them come in at these right angles wherever you possibly can, wherever it makes sense to do so. Take a look at the one on the left. It's basically almost the same size as the one on the right, but this area right here would be a nightmare to maintain. These are tiny, tiny little curves and circles. It's a little too natural, almost like Pablo Picasso drew on your paper. Over on the one on the right, even here might be a problem. Your radius and your curves need to match whatever the mower is. So for the one on the right, if a person had a very small mower, that might work. If a person had a larger mower, that might not work. For rectangles, again, we kind of talked about rectangles a little bit. Rectangles tend to be a bit more formal, although you can do them informally. We're used to rectangles because just about everything in our houses are rectangles, so it's something that we're kind of used to seeing. Again, lots and lots of different sizes. Pick one area, whether that's the lawn, the patio, a deck, or the garden area, to be the most important area and the largest of those areas. So here you can see on the left a formal rectangular theme, and on the right an informal theme. And a client who thought this area might be too much for maintenance, you could easily bring that to here. Instead, you could cut this across here if you wanted to and move the tree into this area. So there's lots of ways that you can do that if you're trying to decrease the maintenance of certain things. Here might be a front entranceway. Again, you can see everything there is created in squares, rectangles of different sizes. What you're trying to avoid are these things right here. They're easy to draw, and there are my dogs going wild because it sounds like UPS showed up. They're easy to draw, but they are hard to maintain and hard to install. So try to avoid those sorts of things. Again, here's other ones here. They're great for narrow and small areas. One of the problems we have with all kinds of landscape design is that we draw things in 2 dimensions, we take pictures in 2 dimensions, but a landscape is 3 dimensions. So you do have to think of that 3rd dimension. So here's an example of a very formal garden. This is Versailles in France. I just took this picture out of a book. You can see the lines right down the center, but even here we've got circular areas. And you'd notice that once you're on site, you don't notice it as much. So this is really something that you view from above. Here's another area in Scotland. This one is a little less obvious. So we've got this formal line here, but you can see parts of rectangles, parts of circles, all being combined together. Even at our own Kingwood Center in Mansfield, you can see very rectilinear, very formal in its general appearance. Diagonal is a little harder. One of the easiest ways to do a diagonal is to simply take rectangles and move them on their side. Put them at a 45-degree angle. That way things are not parallel to the house. But you can also do something different like a 60-degree angle or a 30-degree angle. 30 is tough because of the acute angle, but 60 is not so bad. Right, so this will give you can also do any other weirdo angle if you want. I'll kind of show you that in angular theme in just a second. So you can do lots of different things with this. You need to have orientation sometimes other than 90 degrees sometimes. So some yards are really weird. This also is a great way for forcing a view away from other neighbors or other unsightly views, and it can make spaces if you're larger. It's a little avant-garde, so not everybody likes it, but it is something that's a little bit different. So here on the right-hand side, that's 45 degrees. Both of these are very similar designs. Both have basically just taken your rectilinear design and put it at an angle. So, they're very easy to do in that sense, and they look different. What I'm looking at here on the left-hand side where I've drawn this arrow, what you're going to want to look at is if you stick purely to the theme, that little area shows up. On the right-hand side where we've drawn this line right here, that is technically not at the right angle for the theme, but that makes that space usable. So what you've done is make a usable, an unusable space, a usable space. Again, this is kind of a diagonal theme here. This is it. Some people are going to consider it weird. Some people like it. It's definitely looks very, very different from a lot of other things. This is an area right here where you might think, depending upon the size of the property, that you'd throw a line in there to eliminate that maintenance issue in that little area. These are really difficult to do. A series of angled lines, they are very bold. You often see them in design competitions because that allows a designer to be a little bit more free, but you don't usually see it on most landscapes. Right? Again, you're selecting a design, but you're not necessarily angling the whole design like we saw with diagonal. So it might look like this, and that's odd, and that's weird. And again, you've got this weird area right here, so you might be able to cut that across. And again, technically, it's not one of the angles, but all the angles here are at all the lines are at certain angles to each other, and that's what you're looking for. Not a lot of people are going to like something like that. This is kind of an example of how you might draw that. You can turn your paper into a grid, so you can sort of see the grids here. And then you can start drawing lines at varying angles to kind of help you get the angles correct. It's not an easy thing to do. Most people don't like doing it. It certainly looks weird. And then we have arc and tangent. So this is kind of a combination of circles and lines. It softens things down. So both circles and rectangles tend to be very formal looking, but you combine them together and you get a much softer look. You don't want to turn every angle from a rectangle into a circle. So one way to do this, for me, I always start with the rectilinear theme with the rectangles, and then I convert a few of those to circles. I find it personally much, much harder to start with circles and convert circles into rectangles. So for me, these steps work really, really well. Start with your rectilinear theme. Take a few of those curves. So you can see here, we've curved this one, we've curved this one, we've curved here, and we've curved here. You're not curving every single one. Here, we've curved every single corner, and this is what you do not want to do. They work on terraced areas, they work for flat areas. It doesn't work quite so well for rolling areas, but you can always flatten things out by doing retaining walls. And this is how it might look, right? Again, looks a little bit different, but you know, it's softer than just rectangulars, and it's softer than just circles, and it's less formal looking. Here are some drawings. You can see how it might look when you've got different themes. You can do different themes in the front than in the back. You can do similar themes. Here we've got different themes combined in the hardscape and the softscape. So notice versus the previous one where you had rectilinear in the front and curvilinear or circular in the back, here we've got curvilinear for the softscapes and rectilinear for the hardscapes. So that's a different way to combine things. Here's another one where you're combining two different themes, but rectilinear is the main focal point for the theme. You see there's only one circle there. Here's some drawings, and I found these online. You can just look at these. A lot of realtor sites have stuff like this, and you can see the different types of landscapes that they might be recommending. Again, this is a combination. Here we've got curvilinear for the beds, and we've got very rectilinear down here up closer to the house. So that's another way that you can look to combine things. Here's a very angular house. So we've got very angular landscapes, but again, softening that a little bit with the curvilinear portion. This is diagonal. Now, this one is really, really cool. And what I like about this one is look at these arcs that we have here. These wonderful peaks on this roof, right? So what do? We brought that into the landscape and are mimicking those peaks on the roof. But you know what we also have? We have these arcs here on these windows. So we've replicated that in areas as well. So you can sometimes look to the architecture of the house and see if you can't pull some of those features into your design. This is much more curvilinear, much softer, and you can see everything here pretty much curvilinear, both the hardscape and the softscape. Okay, guys, that's it. If you got any questions, don't hesitate to ask. And if you want to do a Zoom on Friday over the same topic, we can do that as well.